It's gonna be as a home. Yeah, that's, it's really good. It's like, yeah, you want to, you should advise me about that. I can on the last one.
Yeah, we'll go back to the message. That was like.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. First up, no alternates to see, as we have all members here. Additions or changes to the agenda. In the back of my mind, I had, maybe it would be good to take the longest item and get rid of some unfinished business first, but it's hard to know what will be unfinished, whether we're gonna continue the public hearing that we're going to be going into on the two regulation change items. So I propose no changes at this point. John, any thoughts on that?
No, I think that makes sense. I would hope that we would get some direction definitively, one way or another pretty early on.
Okay. All right. The minutes of May 27th, 2025, any corrections, changes?
Make a motion to accept the minutes. I'll say it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Stay.
You abstain. Mr. Tabor abstains. Okay. So next up is the continuation of a public hearing. We have on proposed regulation changes. Let me just remind everybody, please wait to be recognized by myself before you speak. When you are recognized, please state your name and your address for the record, and we'll go from there. So to summarize, this is going to be the application to revise section 7.4.5. Yeah, 7.7 and 21.4.6. Didn't we have a correction of that item number? Somebody mentioned that from the public last meeting. Let's make sure that's accurate.
7.7 was in the last packet, but unfortunately the 7.7 numbers got cut off on the
Okay.
side, but it was actually.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And 21.4.6, structure square footage, and also will be just, I think the public hearing is on an amendment to revise section 21.5.1 agricultural regulations. Most specifically, the method of allowing small livestock. And we do have a new member of the commission tonight. Let me just take it aside. Nancy, have you been sworn in?
No.
Okay, so not yet. Okay, Nancy Hammerstrom was appointed to fill a vacant alternate role, but has not been sworn in, so she's not seated as an alternate yet. So that being said, John, is there anything you'd like to say? I think where we are is we're looking for input from LMAC. And
Yes. So we did receive a proposal from LMAC, some specific changes to the zoning regulations that address the animal separation distance or animal density area. Simultaneously with that, I had been working with Justin as chair of the regulations committee for a potential compromise position also. And I think we actually ended up in almost exactly the same place. So I am happy to either share, well, happy to share both if you'd like. I can share you LMAC's requested change first, and then I can share what I would propose. It's up to you.
Put a question on to LMAC. Would you like to present the document that you submitted? So we did receive an email document from Mary Rocco. And maybe best in your words, or would you rather have them presented?
Hi, Mary Royal, 34 Dunny.
I'm sorry for mispronouncing your last name.
That's a happens on occasion. I think what we'd like to express on behalf of the LMAC is we sincerely appreciate the time for LMAC to meet, to deliberate, and to come to a common ground position that we believe protects two core values. The core value of the right to farm and the core value of the state of Columbia Lake. And the compromise or common ground that we have suggested reads, and John may have edited this, I asked him to please put it in the appropriate language. Specific to 21.5.1 in the watershed protection zone LA, a 1 acre minimum will be retained for exclusion of small farm animals and poultry. And then we made the appropriate changes in the matrix. I have copies that I can present.
You received that communication or that information.
There you have it.
John, any thoughts?
Of what was proposed?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think it actually lines up pretty well with what I had been thinking for the last couple of weeks. So can you
Okay.
see this on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just what they proposed is, you know, we had indicated no minimum for small animals or poultry. What they're proposing is 1 acre for properties in the Columbian Lake watershed area subzone LA. They'd also added some language here in the conditions that animals must be caged or fenced in. That's additional language. You know, if you're asking me my opinion, I don't know if that's strictly necessary, but that's, I just wanted to point out that that's being proposed.
Yeah, I think that's retained from.
Oh, is that retained?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not from.
Fact did not touch that box.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
Thank
gonna put up my my version of the sort of the live version. Make this a little bit bigger. And so the table that I had been playing with a little bit here. Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, is almost identical language. If you can see this, is again rabbits and other similarly sized animal, no minimum semicolon except in Columbia Lake watershed A, where 1 acre minimum shall be required. Same for poultry. It's essentially the same language. And while we were at that, there were some typos noted in previous rounds. I'm sorry, scrolling. There was that we had deleted 75 feet from adjoining property line in little c there. We just changed that to match with the proposed regulation, which is 100-foot separation for large animals and 50 feet for small animals. So we added that as well. But yeah, the language that I was basically ready to propose this evening, and the language from LMAC is essentially identical.
Okay. All good. Any comments from the commission? I'll open it up to the public comment.
Love it. It's a great compromise. Love to see where. Good job.
Yeah. Any thoughts from the public? Oh my. Yes, sir.
James Lock, 24 Doubleday Road. I think it's a fair compromise. I'm in favor.
Okay. Thank you. Right. I just want to thank everybody. So that said, with regard to item 5.2, I'm kind of going out of order. Let's go back and revisit the structure square footage. So where we were with that is the most substantive thing there had to do with sheds being able, at reduced setback, being able to be 200 square feet instead of the 120 square feet. All their limitations still prevail, height limitation and so on. So we had testimony opposing the change from 120 to 200. Don't remember the testimony in the other direction. That as a subcommittee, it seemed to be, put us more in line with other towns.
Yeah, and with our own permitting process, yeah, and just really briefly, if you don't mind, because it'll pay for
Please.
So I think there has been some confusion, like the agricultural piece was directly tied to that 120 to 200, and it's not, they're two completely separate things. And it was just simply to align with permitting requirements. So you need a permit for certain things over 200 square feet, looks like, well, why do we have 120 here, 200 here, so it was just for clarification. But I know there's some opposition to it, but that's just the brief history of it.
Is there anything else you said about that?
Yeah, the one other thing that we haven't talked about that is in here is increasing potential patio, which is an impervious area as well, so. That before had been limited to 120 square feet, we also increased to 200.
I don't know if that,
It's what it says.
is that the case?
Yeah, see. On page 3,
It's item 21.4.6. Proposed change from 120 square feet of impervious area to 200 square feet is the threshold. To be able to do without changing.
no, it makes sense, it makes sense, they're both impervious areas. So.
Yeah, so I guess that would be my comment.
Yeah,
Either
well,
both
it makes
the same,
sense,
right?
I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure everyone understands that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Is there any reason anyone sees to keep the public hearings open?
Not my opinion.
Anyone? Nancy?
Is this just, are you just talking about just the lake now, or just the whole proposal in general?
The whole proposal in general.
Nancy Hammerstrom, 5 Oakwood. I just wanted to add my input. I've been attending these hearings, watching what's going on. First of all, I want to commend the folks on the lake for the work that they've done. They didn't just pop up and start doing this kind of work. They've been doing it for years, and because of it, our lake is in such great condition, and therefore town's lake and reputation, so I thank you all. And while a lot of this has gone on, this proposal affects the rest of town too. Although a lot of it has focused on the lake, and I understand why. And I just want to add a couple of final thoughts about how it's going to affect the rest of the town. I'm concerned about this the change in the 100-foot setback from a dwelling instead of a property line. This could impinge upon other people's rights to improve or change or add addition to their property. And I think that's a pretty big factor, a pretty big change. I'm not in favor of that, because I think it impinges upon other people's property rights.
This is
Right.
under the livestock.
Well, yeah, there's the proposal stance, can have an unlimited number of livestock on any size property other than the lake now, as a modification, is that correct?
No, well, there's still the 3-acre minimum for livestock, for larger livestock, anything but,
But you could have as many larger livestock on 3 acres now as you would like. is
we're
that
not
correct?
dictating a limitation though, I'm sure.
Right, so it's open to someone deciding to have as much as they want, and, I think that that's a concern as well, not because I think there's going to be a flood of abuse or, neglect or anything like that right away, but there are people that will take advantage of that. And with the regulations as proposed, leave too much up in the air and out in the open, the problem doesn't. I know, listening to all of the comments that have been made, and the solution is that other people from other commissions or other residents in town will come in to deal with the problem, or the state will come in to deal with the problem. Just don't have full confidence in that, and I think that, it needs to be made clear for people exactly what the stipulations should be, what the guardrails should be. It shouldn't be so open-ended. So that because when it does cause a problem, it's kind of vague and open as to how it will be handled. And I have concerns about that, because I think that there are folks in town who just don't have a lot of respect for other people's property rights. No one in this room, I've listened to all of the conversation, it's been civil, it's been professional. I don't have any problems with anyone in this room, but there are other folks in town who feel that their rights are absolute. They can make, it's their right to make as much of a mess as they can make, to make as much noise as they can make. To make as much smoke and odor as they can make, and if other people don't like it, it's just too bad for them. And this leaves us vulnerable, this proposal as open-ended as it is. Will cause problems in that regard in the future, so I'm worried about it, and I wish it were worded a bit differently. To be a little bit more protective of everyone's rights. So thank you.
And just a comment on that. um, Reviewing the table. The separations have actually become greater than they are now. Going through it, for example, equine, bovine, sheep, goats, etc. Currently, they're 50 feet separation. The new proposal is 100 feet.
Right, from a dwelling, which means that, right?
It's doubling what the existing situation is what I'm saying. For rabbits and et cetera, it was 25 feet, now it's 50 feet, so the separation is
50
double.
feet from a dwelling, not a
That's
property
pretty-
line. No,
It was, it
Yeah.
used to be 25 feet from off-site residential dwelling. Okay,
okay,
now it's proposed to be 50 feet.
oh, my mistake then, I thought
Okay.
it was from the,
The livestock was 50 feet from off-site residential dwelling, it is now proposed to be 100 feet. So I think the subcommittee has done a good job in addressing some of the concerns that were expressed early on. And, you know, I mean, the existing,
and I misunderstand the previous, from one of the previous hearings, the conversation on that. And I mean, did you, wasn't it making it from, could have impacted, prevent somebody from putting an addition on their house if they wanted?
That was the question I was gonna ask, how does this affect? A situation where you measure the 100 feet and everything's okay, but the neighbor then. As a matter of right, because it's got, the setbacks and the lot coverage availability wants to build an addition. And the addition's gonna change that 100 feet and make it go to 60. What happens then?
Who's doing the addition, the neighbor without the farm animals or the neighbor?
Yes.
with the animals? It wouldn't make any difference, right? It's, John, do you have a clear answer to that? They would be grandfathered in, right?
Yeah, the residential, non-agricultural residential property owner would not be prevented from expanding their property as long as they were doing it in conjunction with the regulations.
but would the separation be recalculated considering the new addition?
Um,
Simple.
it would if there was no agricultural structure in place. Then the residential dwelling would be closer. But
We're not talking
if the structure was already in place, if the agricultural structure was already in place, the chicken coop, the horse barn, whatever, it was already in place, that would be
We're not
pre-existing.
We're not
I'm
just
not-
we're not talking about structures, we're also talking about live animals. That would be allowed to graze or.
Yeah, grazing is not, there's no setback for grazing.
There's some confusion. So all of the setbacks as they currently are dictated are to housing of animals, not. So here's one of the big issues that has been frustrating for some people. You can have a fence line on a property line, you can graze animals up to a property line, you can spread manure up to a property line, so all of these setbacks. And no one's gonna stop anybody from doing that, because that's not, I mean, that's not a common thing to stop people from doing. So all of the setbacks that we're talking about are for animal housing. Right.
But if I were to build a barn to house my horses 100 feet away from your house, and you decided to put an addition on your house that is closer. I'm not gonna pick my barn up and move it. I was there
That-
first.
Correct. That decision would be Justin's. He would choose to move his residence closer. That's his choice.
Cause you know what's already there.
Right.
So let's summarize by saying, once you've established that use, it's a grandfathered use, correct?
Well, there's no such thing as grandfather, but yes, it's a pre-existing condition.
Yes.
Martha Carter, 34 Udoni. I don't have it in front of me to check, but I think what Nancy is referring to is there is strike through 75 feet from the property boundary. I'm not sure it was in relation to dwellings, but to maneuver. I'm not sure, but I remember reading that, and
You weren't, I don't, that doesn't,
if somebody.
That's a recollection of my part.
Or. Here it is, yes, here it is. It's, after the matrix, it says, buildings used for sheltering animals and storing supplies of suitable construction materials. Buildings housing livestock and or animal waste and refuse on any parcel shall be located at least. It used to say 75 feet from any adjoining property line and 100 feet from any offsite residential dwelling. And the phrase 75 feet from any adjoining property line has strikeouts through it. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, you're right, the adjustment was to make it consistent with just 100 feet from an off-site dwelling for large livestock. With the normal. Yeah, you're right. For anything housing animals or, yeah,
okay. So, yes,
Henry, back again, 41 Sleepy Hollow, it seemed to me that it would be worthwhile balancing rights with development and neighbors and so forth, to at least have some minimum, maybe not 75 feet, but some minimum from the property line. As well as the 100 feet from the dwelling, rather than strike it all together, because that allows the animal waste and the livestock be as close to the property line as you get, which in some instances allows the setback to be reduced if it's a smaller building.
if it's a structure, all of the normal setbacks for structures will still apply, we're not eliminating the setback, what we're doing, you can make an argument that it's more protective. Is because we're concerned between, or speaking for subcommittee or trying to through our thought process out together. That the concern is between where the animals are housed, the structure and offsite dwellings. And it seems smarter, instead of dictating a setback to a property line, when we already have setbacks to property lines for any structure. So that was the logic behind that. Also considering what I said earlier, if you have livestock that are grazing, you graze up to a property line, so if you have a field that you're fertilizing, you can fertilize up to the property line. The structure itself being 100 feet from an offsite dwelling seemed very reasonable, in some cases more protective.
thank you, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts? We ready to close both of these public hearings? Okay, making motion that we close the public hearings on the proposed revision, item 5.1 and also 5.2. The 5.1 being the revisions to section 7.4.5, 7.7, and 21.4.6, and the 5.2, is the item number of the revision to section 21.5.1.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Very good. Thank you. Next. Audience of citizens. Anything to bring up? Something I forgot to mention is Nancy Hammerstrom, has been appointed as an alternate. I did mention that. I apologize. Forgive me. I meant to mention, so Savannah, I don't know if I mentioned this at our last meeting. Savannah, our zoning code enforcement agent, is now also the inland wetlands agent and is hired full-time by the town as of June 1st. And welcome in that role and done some wonderful work. And I know you'll expand that to another commission.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So, we're gonna move to item 7, unfinished business. What's the commission's pleasure? Just let me remind the public, we'll be discussing this as a commission, only the seated members of the commission can participate in the discussion. There would no public comment allowed, the time for public comment is closed. And so we're gonna decide what we want to do with this, and I'd like to get a perspective from the commission. Are you ready to vote on this? Do you want to discuss it point by point? I've heard a lot, I think we've all heard a lot, and really appreciate what we've heard.
Yeah, no, and I listened to the LMAC meeting when they discussed this, and I thought they had some very thoughtful discussion around that piece, and again, just to reiterate. That particular piece that people have been concerned about is just an alignment from 120 to 200. So I'm ready on this, I think there's been a lot of positive discussion around it.
Any other thoughts from the commission? So let's state for the record, if everyone's in agreement, if we have consensus, that the agricultural regulations that we would vote on are the ones that's with the proposed compromise that was presented, and the final form of that is the one that John marked up.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I want to read through this in more detail to make sure that what we approve exactly identifies all of the points that were modified in this. And if, John, if you feel we need time for you to craft a formalized full motion that incorporates that language, let me know. Do you think we can do it on the fly here tonight? I want to
Yeah.
be very careful.
I think you can, if you want, I can put it on the screen again. The meeting is recording, so there's a record of this. I think you could probably propose to approve the amendments as adjusted at this evening's meeting, specifically the table under 21.5.13B under small animals, rabbits and similarly sized animals, as well as poultry. The proposed 1 acre minimum would be removed except for Columbia Lake Watershed A, where 1 acre minimum shall be required for both rabbits and poultry. And then in the subsection C, beneath the table, we're changing to adding clarification in the phrase buildings, housing, livestock, and or animal waste and refuse on any parcel shall be located at least 100 feet away from any offsite residential dwelling for large animals and 50 feet for small animals. Other structures shall meet setback regulations for that district. So those are the new changes to the proposal on the table.
Okay. I'm gonna go back in the order that we're considering item 7.1 first, but let's just assume for a moment that if we vote on the regulation change, which is item 7.2 on our agenda, that we vote for it as modified the way you just verbalized. Item 7.1. I would propose that we move forward with the regulation change to change the square footage for impervious structures and for sheds, which is an impervious structure, but that's with regard to the reduced setback, not changing anything, but changing the threshold to 200 feet for each of those that were previously 120 square feet. So I'll make a motion, we accept the proposal to revise section 7.4.5, 7.7, and 21.4.6 as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Let's see. Okay, item 7.2, the zoning amendment to revise section 21.5.1. Any discussion, more discussion of that? I'll make a motion that we accept a proposal as amended by our town planner and verbalized just a moment ago.
I'll say,
Justin seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. There we have it. Thank you. I said this before, we heard so much intelligent, and kind and respectful testimony. It just was lower down.
thanks everybody for your input.
Next up, we have item 7.3. Site plan application, Norman Thibodeau Junior, professional engineer, formerly engineering, for a proposed 60 by 100 foot addition for a commercial sign business at 233 Route 6, map 6, lot 28A, zone CM1, lot area 4.4 acres. So we have had this come before us and we were waiting to get some inland wetland approval. And we now have that in place for that project.
Yes, good evening for the record, Mr. Nassif, Greg Glaud from Killingley Engineering. So I represent Quality Sign Crafters on the application. We did obtain wetlands approval at their last meeting. And we've also, since last meeting, have been granted approval from the Eastern Highlands Health District for a B100 for the building addition.
Okay. Wonderful. Is there, I'm gonna look, John, are you clear out on everything that you would need to be clear on?
I am, yes.
Savannah? All good? Commission, any questions?
Don't we normally require elevations of the?
On a site plan application, I don't know, a special permit we do. I don't.
We did submit, with the original application, we did submit a floor plan and some elevation views. I think I discussed them at the meeting last month. Not sure if they're in your package, but there were some, they were from Provost and Rivero.
For the most part, that addition, as I recollect, the presentation would not be viewable, almost invisible from the street.
Correct.
There's one that gets it, because of the same person. There's no those. Okay. There's some elevation to do it. That said, if there's no questions from the commission on the motion, we approve the proposal as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your time on this.
Next up, as is going to be on every meeting agenda, is a POCD. And we have a copy of the timeline as presented. And we're gonna very shortly get into this, probably next meeting.
So the proposal, Mr. Chair, would be to give an update of the background information, the basic demographic stuff for the next meeting.
And then. Oh, yeah, item 7.4.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else we need tonight on this?
Not on my
Okay.
account.
John, what's the response rate been for the survey so far?
Oh, good question. Let me check SurveyMonkey and I'll let you know shortly.
Okay, we'll move on from that. So just to, so we're gonna be deeply into this. The item number, item 8.1, it was suggested that this is a special permit application. We just have to receive it, schedule a public hearing. And we're gonna be scheduling that for 2 meetings from tonight, which will be July 14th. So we will have time to get deeply into the POCD, and Johnny will be discussing what's on the table for that meeting. Next item is under new business, item 8.1, a special permit application of OSWA LLC for excavation and grading for section 63 of the Columbia zoning regulations at 0 Route 6, map 6, lot 25, a CM1 zone, lot area is 10 acres. So this is an application for grading that a site that I've seen a lot of activity on that. And so this is a special permit application. So we're going to need to set a public hearing date for it. Probably be well not to discuss it at this point if we're setting a public hearing, but any background you'd like to give us on this, John?
No, just, and a lot of credit goes to Savannah, for tracking down the owner, because obviously there's been a lot of clearing and just clearing of trees in an upland area, which is to say not in a wetland area, is permitted as of right. There's no permitting required, as is some minor grading. However, the grading that's being done there is fairly significant, as I'm sure anyone who's driven past can see. And so through Savannah, we contacted the property owner and suggested that they come in, even though they don't necessarily know what their end use is going to be. Obviously, they're looking to develop the site and position it for development. But simply the amount of grading that they're doing would require a little bit more work. My understanding is they don't know precisely what they're doing with the property in terms of final disposition or construction yet, but the grading is significant enough where it needs commission review, particularly because it's adjacent to a residential zone across Roses Bridge Road.
I have a question for Savannah. Is there any evidence that there's a gravel operation going on there? Because we have very specific regulations about the scope of operations that are permitted to be done under the guise of that.
No, there's not. I know there's some speculation on that. So the bottom portion of the site, like the lower half of the hopper, that is going to come before you potentially the second special permit application for a lay down area. So I know that looks kind of strange because there has been a lot of gravel laid out there. So that would actually be target enterprise applying for that as potential. Just might be out there. The top portion of the site, no, it's just grading to make it ready for a tenant.
Okay. All right,
Did you understand what you said?
I got most of it.
Huh?
I got most of it.
Your
Good.
sound is going in and out, Savannah.
I don't have it. It could be a lay down area. There may be such permit.
Yeah, well, I'm having a hard time now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, Savannah.
All right, well, this will all come to be reviewed in our public hearing, so, and the likely best date, given the notification needs, is have a public hearing on July 14th. 7 o'clock, town hall here, I'll make a motion for same.
I'll second
Okay, any discussion, those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous, so.
it. Yeah,
Okay, so we have a public hearing set for July 14, 2025. Nothing under regulation revision at this point. Gonna take a deep breath and get
Yeah, I
out
mean,
of
I got my cooler in the back of the truck, there's no alcohol in it.
Okay. All right.
what have you been doing, Mike?
John, do you want to go over communication reports, anything to highlight?
Yeah, oh, Jesus, yeah. So I'm not sure the article on the mural court ruling, I actually, to be honest with you, I didn't read that one yet.
I can speak to that, John, if you want. I had Mary Kate put that in the packet.
Okay,
Yeah, just really quick on that one. So there's some information here. This is a court case that I've been following for several years. Out in New Hampshire, where there was a bakery that painted a mural that depicted baked goods, and the local zoning basically gave a cease and desist and said that they couldn't do it. It was a sign. I know that we had, before my time, I know that we had something similar in town too. But it's worth watching this stuff because it went to the federal courts. The guy fought it and they found it a First Amendment violation. He was allowed to do that. And I thought it was interesting only for the fact that we always need to be cognizant of these things. A lot of times there'll be situations maybe where something's enforced and the town doesn't get taken to court, or the person just kind of accepts the CEO's ruling or the commission's ruling. And we really need to be thoughtful about all of that stuff because it can get up to the point of a constitutional violation in this case. So there's an article in here, it's a super interesting read, so just thought I would throw that for everybody's information.
Thank you. Yeah, very helpful. The CROG, regional strategy, anything on that?
Sure. So that was just a solicitation that we talked about last meeting. That CROG is doing a regional housing study and offered to have one of their consultants do sort of a preliminary developability analysis, including some sketch drawings. And so I asked the commission if they would be interested in essentially nominating any properties for preliminary analysis. Since that point, I met with Chris Ram, who is in the process of looking at potential development scenarios for his property off of Zegda Road. And I offered him the opportunity to do this, but I think he's has a pretty strong idea of how he'd like to see the property developed, so he doesn't really need a third party to kind of give him some sketch ideas. But I haven't heard any other proposed suggestions for development properties. So and we can let it go, it's fine. But it was just an opportunity I wanted to make the commission aware of.
Okay. In Public Act 25-49, we have a printed copy here.
Sure. So you have a whole copy. It's a big act. It's 80 something pages.
Oh, there's
So-
only one copy.
Okay, I just wanted to note, so this was housing or House Bill 5002 that was approved by the Senate and the House last weekend, I believe, before the end of the legislative session. It covers a number of things, including converting the affordable housing plan, the 5-year plan that every commission has to come up with, into something more what we refer to as a fair share plan. The legislation calls it a priority action housing plan, I believe, wherein in addition to coming up with methods for increasing affordable housing generally, each town would be essentially assigned a number, a target of housing units to enable development of. Doesn't require municipalities to build anything, to put funds towards construction. It's really more about creating the regulatory atmosphere that would enable the creation of a certain number of units, and that number of units would also have some subcategories of, there's a maximum percentage of senior exclusive units, and there's a maximum percentage of, a studio and 1-bedroom units, so that, family housing is considered and mixed age housing is considered. So there's basically a whole new slew of requirements of a municipal affordable housing plan. The way it's rolling out, and the governor hasn't signed this yet, there's an initiative underway to, there's 2 initiatives, one to get the governor to veto it, one to get the governor to sign it. A lot of communities are feeling that this might be disruptive. I would state, just on Columbia's behalf, that we're actually doing a pretty good job of reducing regulatory obstacles towards housing development. We relatively recently made accessory apartments as of right, and increased the square footage of, and basically made 2-family dwellings as of right. And we basically took density limits off of multifamily housing and allowed it all over town instead of just the commercial district. So Columbia is actually making significant progress down that path towards removal of regulatory obstacles towards development of multifamily housing. But there will be a lot more coming out on this over the next couple of months. I believe if this gets signed into law, which I have every reason it will, to believe it will, the state OPM, the Office of Responsible Growth, it's inside the Office of Policy and Management, needs to finalize the municipal numbers, I think, by October. So we will know by October what our target number is. And then I believe we will have until um, the following year, end of 2026 or beginning of 2027, because they're chunking the state up into, I think, 3 swaths. And I think, A through F, including Columbia, is the first swath. And so we will have to have a plan written in the first year of this program, which I think, again, is end of 2026, beginning of 2027. And then the G through R's, and then, the S through Z's, or whatever it is. But so Columbia will be in the first chunk of that. There are a number of other things in there that all municipalities are now going to be required to have a municipal fair rent commission, which I suspect will be done mostly regionally, because that was part of the enabling legislation. Municipalities are required to remove arbitrary parking minimum numbers for new developments. So, a lot of towns, and I think Columbia also has a formula for parking. If you're a restaurant, then you need 3 spots per table. If you're a retail, you need 5 spots per 1,000 square feet, that sort of thing. The regulations would eliminate those arbitrary numbers, but would instead require applicants to show how much parking their use was likely to demand, and show that they have accounted for that parking. So it's significantly more case by case, and eliminates sort of the arbitrary, huge parking numbers. There is also a provision in there for an as of right conversion of commercially zoned property to become middle housing, which is to say between 2 and 9 residential units as of right. So in some of our our vacant commercial, or our commercially zoned property, this bill would essentially allow a small scale multifamily to happen there, which is something that was already possible in our commercial zones anyway. So I don't think this bill particularly is going to change that much in Columbia, but there is a lot of attention and noise around this one. And I'll just note, to Justin's question from previously, we've gotten to date 103 responses on the survey. A couple more pushes I think would be useful. I'd like to see that number up to around 200 or 300. We put it in community views, Columbia Views, as well as blasted it out there on, I believe, on the Facebook page, and the text alert system that the selectman or the town manager uses. We'll probably do that another time or two. But 100 out of our first sort of publicity blast isn't too bad.
Do you want to hold off on submitting any of the results of the survey until we get to a point where everybody's had their say?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I don't want to dig into any analysis until we've given this a couple more months, I'd say.
Okay. Any thoughts, questions?
Just if I'm not mistaken, the last time we did this, we only got like 54 responses.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're all way ahead of the game.
Well,
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Open discussion?
yeah, under discussion, I was thinking if we could set a precedent where whenever we have a package that's brought to us like this, that we bring them to the next meeting. So we don't, this seems like I have a big pile of papers. We get a new set every time we show up for a meeting.
And poor Mary Kay asked.
Yeah, why can't we, as commission members, like, for instance, we know we're gonna, in 2 weeks, we're gonna be looking at this one, but why can't we bring our own package back?
We don't need a motion on that.
Yeah, we don't. You know what? Let me suggest this. Take the bulky stuff and let's leave it behind. You won't reprint it.
Yeah.
And then the stuff that you absolutely need, take that, and then you do get a digital packet, so.
It's just, there may be additional information added to an application.
Yeah, I know, I can understand that, but I'm just saying, it seems like a lot of paper, a lot of trees getting killed for these packages.
No, I agree.
It's a good point, Dave. Thank you. Maybe we don't need as many printed out, one for every other member or something. Yeah, I don't mind sharing, Bob.
I'm gonna leave mine at Mary Kay.
Okay.
What she does with it.
Listen, happens a lot. It's a group. Not just on the land.
Additions.
Good point. Anything else under open discussion? Anything from the public anyone would like to bring up to us? No, thank you. Okay, thank you. No executive session. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Sorry.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Okay, you wanna get out of here, I got to pee.
Oh,
Okay. Where was mine? Yeah, it was so close. So,
Thank